Michel de Nostradamus, better known as Nostradamus, is erected as a truly enigmatic figure in the annals of history, an erudite whose legacy is woven with threads of scientific and intellectual skill and an undeniable aura of mysticism. For centuries, his cryptic prophecies have maintained an unbreakable control over the imagination of people from all corners of the world and from all generations. These predictions, written in often dark verses, cover an amazing variety of topics, from dramatic political upheavals that remodel nations to devastating natural catastrophes that alter the landscape of our world. It seems, according to his fervent believers, that Nostradamus possessed a strange ability to look through the veil of time and foresee the tapestry of future events that would unfold. This video embarks on a journey to explore the most significant and commented prophecies attributed to Nostradamus, focusing particularly on those that, according to dedicated followers and expert interpreters of his work, are believed to potentially come true in 2025. We will reveal a carefully selected selection of the 10 main prophecies that have aroused the most intense public interest and caused countless discussions and debates. 10. The ascent of a world leader. Nostradamus, the famous 16th century astrologer and visionary, is famous for his supposed ability to predict transcendental events throughout history. Among his most debated and discussed prophecies is one that speaks of the dramatic emergence of a world leader, an individual destined to profoundly alter the course of human history as we know it. In his enigmatic quartets, Nostradamus alludes to a prominent figure from the north, a leader who will exercise power with unbreakable strength and conviction, thus initiating transformations that will be perceived as undeniably positive and potentially destructive. This particular prophecy has been widely interpreted as a possible indicator of the emergence of a powerful political leader in 2025, a figure who will boldly defy the established world order and fundamentally change the foundations of global relations. Many followers believe that this refers to contemporary political figures with existing authoritarian tendencies that are gaining an increasing global influence. With crucial elections scheduled for various influential countries around the world, there is plenty of speculation that Nostradamus accurately predicted the rise of a leader capable of altering the established balance of global power. The escalation of international tensions and the proliferation of political divisions around the world could well create an environment conducive for a charismatic leader, but potentially disturbing from the north, to take a step forward and abode by a new world order. The surprising similarities between the description made by Nostradamus of this enigmatic leader and the attributes of contemporary political figures have fueled intense speculation about his potential identities. Some believe that it could be an established leader who already exerts considerable control over his nation, while others argue that the figure that Nostradamus imagined has not yet fully emerged on the world stage. Regardless of his current state, it remains evident that this prophecy resonates in the modern public, especially as we approach the long-awaited year 2025. Experts who have spent years studying Nostradamus's prophecies emphasize that, while his quartets are often intentionally cryptic and open to multiple interpretations, many of them show a strange correspondence with current events, giving credit to the belief that he really had a gift for prediction. Number 9. Global natural disasters. Among the vast and diverse tapestry of Nostradamus's prophecies, one of the most discouraging and disturbing refers to a series of catastrophic natural disasters that will devastate the planet in 2025. His writings suggest that these cataclysmic events will indiscriminately affect both the powerful nations and the smaller and more vulnerable communities scattered around the world. Nostradamus predicts earthquakes, floods, and unprecedented magnitude storms that will devastate anything that humanity has ever witnessed, suggesting that the Earth itself may be shaking at the precipice of an environmental crisis like no other in recorded history. Academics and researchers dedicated to analyzing Nostradamus's predictions have noticed a chilling alignment between his visions and contemporary climatic patterns, which makes the prophecy even more disconcerting. In a world that is already facing the growing challenges of climate change, the disturbing perspective of even more serious and frequent natural disasters seems increasingly plausible. Experts have warned for a long time and constantly that phenomena such as global warming, galloping deforestation, and widespread pollution are exacerbating both the frequency and intensity of natural disasters, a trend that disturbingly reflects the forecast shown in Nostradamus's prophecies. A predominant interpretation of this prophecy postulates that Nostradamus was, in fact, a warning about the cumulative and devastating effects of unbridled climate change. His cryptic references to fire in the sky and overflowing rivers could easily allude to the growing prevalence of forest fires and the growing severity of extreme storms, which have become more common and destructive as a direct result of climate change. The mention of Nostradamus of the earthquake on Earth can also be related to an increase observed in seismic activity, potentially attributed to human actions, such as the extensive extraction of resources that can destabilize the Earth's crust. Although Nostradamus's prophecies are often considered symbolic and open to individual interpretation, the apparent correlation between his visions and the growing frequency and intensity of natural disasters of today has aroused renewed and widespread interest in his works. Some believe that the disasters foreseen for 2025 will serve as a powerful warning, inciting humanity to change its destructive course before it is irrevocably too late. On the contrary, skeptics argue that Nostradamus's predictions are deliberately vague and generalized, making them applicable to virtually any scenario that involves a disaster, regardless of its cause or specific scale. 8. Social revolutions. Nostradamus's writings also predict a series of profound social revolutions that will spread around the world in 2025. These disorders, according to his prophecies, will arise from the purulent wounds of growing inequality and growing dissatisfaction with prevailing social and political conditions. Nostradamus describes a fire that will burn intensely in the hearts of cities, a phrase often interpreted as a prediction of generalized social discomfort and revolutionary changes that could fundamentally remodel the very fabric of modern society. Over the years, the interpretations of this prophecy in particular have inevitably varied, but in the current climate, characterized by a marked economic disparity and increasing social tensions, the prophecy seems especially pertinent and relevant. The growing gap between the rich elite and the impoverished masses, along with the increasingly intense problems of race, gender, and class inequality, creates a volatile environment conducive to the type of radical social revolution that Nostradamus predicted centuries ago. A predominant interpretation suggests that Nostradamus anticipated a massive and coordinated uprising against the ruling elites. His reference to the fire in the hearts of cities could symbolically represent the protests and riots that frequently break out in urban areas, where inequality is more visible and felt. In recent years, large-scale protests have broken out all over the world, from Hong Kong to Paris, while citizens demand justice and equality in response to systemic corruption and oppression. Nostradamus's prophecy may well indicate that these riots will intensify significantly in 2025, which will ultimately lead to profound and lasting social changes. Another perspective suggests that technology will play a fundamental and transformative role in these imminent revolutions. Nostradamus mentions a new power that will emerge and dispel the status quo, which some academics see as a potential reference to social networks and digital technology. In today's interconnected world, online platforms have shown to be powerful tools for organizing social movements, as demonstrated by the Arab Spring and the Black Lives Matter movement. This prophecy could be pointing towards a digital revolution that will fundamentally alter the dynamics of global power. However, skeptics remain unconvinced and argue that Nostradamus's deliberately vague language allows for a multitude of interpretations, making it applicable to virtually any form of conflict or social unrest. Number 7. Extreme climate changes. Nostradamus also predicted that 2025 would witness extreme and unprecedented climate changes that would significantly disrupt the delicate natural balance of the planet. In his cryptic quartets, he refers to furious winds and raging seas, which many interpreters understand as warnings of increasingly destructive storms, devastating hurricanes, and other extreme meteorological phenomena of unprecedented scale and intensity. While climate change is by no means a new concern, the undeniable intensity and frequency of such phenomena have increased dramatically in recent years. Waves of devastating heat, violent storms, and catastrophic floods are wreaking havoc all over the world, and scientists continue to issue increasingly serious warnings that climate change is actively worsening these events and making them more frequent. Nostradamus's prophecy seems to align with these growing and well-founded concerns, suggesting that 2025 could mark a critical turning point when the effects of climate change become even more severe and widespread. A common interpretation of this prophecy is that Nostradamus was predicting a significant increase in the frequency and intensity of natural disasters as a direct consequence of the escalation of climate change. References to furious winds and raging seas could be interpreted symbolically as hurricanes and typhoons that devastate coastal regions, while images of fire in the sky may refer to devastating forest fires that have devastated forests in recent years. These events are already occurring with alarming regularity, and the possibility that they will intensify in the coming years is a reason for serious and widespread concern. Another interpretation suggests that Nostradamus was predicting wider and more complete global climate change beyond extreme climate events. His mention of dark skies could be a reference to widespread pollution and global darkening caused by uncontrolled emissions of fossil fuels and other pollutants. 6. Revelation of ancient secrets. Nostradamus predicted that 2025 could be a witness to the remarkable revelation of ancient secrets that have remained hidden for centuries, hidden from the eyes of the world. According to his cryptic quartets, these truths buried for a long time will dramatically alter our understanding of history and human knowledge, defying beliefs and rooted theories that have shaped our understanding of the past. Many have speculated that this could mean the discovery of lost texts, artifacts of immense historical importance, or bodies of previously unknown knowledge that could rewrite our understanding of historical narratives and remodel our perception of the past. A common interpretation of this prophecy is that Nostradamus predicted the discovery of manuscripts and ancient texts that had been deliberately hidden for political or religious reasons, kept hidden from the public eye for centuries. The advances in exploration techniques and innovative preservation technologies make the discovery of these texts more feasible than ever. These innovative discoveries could offer new and invaluable knowledge about past civilizations, shed light on previously unknown aspects of their cultures and customs, and potentially change the course of historical erudition. 5. The escalation of global conflicts and the shadow of the Antichrist. The intricate quartets of Nostradamus have been interpreted for a long time as sinister predictions of extensive military conflicts that could erupt in 2025. Their visions paint a dark panorama of devastating wars, involving a multitude of nations, thus accelerating the descent of the world into a global catastrophe. The evocative phrase, "fire and blood in heaven," is often understood as a chilling reference to modern air attacks and implacable bombings, suggesting a potential conflict involving the most formidable military powers in the world. Academics and experts dedicated to the study of Nostradamus prophecies have established connections between these war predictions and the growing geopolitical tensions that define our current world panorama. As diplomatic relations between global superpowers become increasingly tense, the spectrum of a military conflict projects an increasingly large shadow. Controversial disputes over territories, the incessant accumulation of advanced weapons, and deeply rooted ideological clashes are all potential catalysts that could trigger a series of increasing confrontations, which would ultimately culminate in a large-scale war. Nostradamus seems to have foreseen a dangerous scenario in which traditional diplomacy fails and nations resort to violent means as a desperate attempt to resolve their differences. Many interpretations of this prophecy pose a potential conflict between the dominant superpowers of the world, naming countries such as the United States, China, and Russia as possible key players in this global drama that is approaching. The surprising images of great eagles faced have been widely interpreted as a symbolic representation of these powerful nations, whose relations have undoubtedly deteriorated in recent years. The persistent risk that a territorial dispute or devastating diplomatic failure triggers a broader and more generalized conflict remains an important concern within the current volatile geopolitical climate. In addition, the disturbing mention of fire in the sky is sometimes linked to the terrifying possibility of a nuclear war, further intensifying the potential for a generalized destruction and unimaginable consequences. Within the broader context of global conflicts, some historians and researchers believe that Nostradamus may have been alluding to the Third World War. The French clairvoyant seems to have prophesied the beginning of a new global conflict, precisely 79 years after the conclusion of the Second World War. Contemporary analysts and geopolitical experts have begun to seriously consider the possibility of a possible confrontation centered in China, particularly as the nation continues its meteoric rise towards prominence and global influence. In recent years, China has demonstrated its military capabilities in disputed regions such as the South China Sea and Taiwan, often through a solid and assertive naval presence. Some scholars argue that these prophecies could be interpreted as allusions to the growing tensions in Asia, particularly those between China and the NATO countries, which could potentially escalate to become a violent military confrontation or even a large-scale war. The extensive writings of Nostradamus also contain prophecies that make explicit reference to the naval war and intense combats, including the sinister mention of a red adversary, which will finally pale in fear, thus sinking the vast ocean in a state of profound fear. Although some interpreters have identified the red adversary as a direct reference to China, it is important to recognize that this prophecy could also apply to other existing conflicts, such as the current situation in Ukraine, the latent tensions between China and Taiwan, or even the persistent conflicts and violence in Palestine, represent other possible focal points for future conflicts. Some commentators establish connections between these complex events, interpreting each earthquake, great political agitation, and active aggression directed at Israel as indicators of the imminent arrival of the end of times. While these events may serve as signs of potentially challenging tests that are coming, they do not necessarily serve as definitive indicators that the end of the world is imminent. The Apostle Paul issued a warning about an increase in false teachings during the last days, explicitly declaring, "The Spirit says clearly that in the last days some will abandon faith and will follow deceiving spirits and doctrines of demons." The last days are often characterized as dangerous, largely due to the proliferation of evil and the growing number of people who move away from the truth. Throughout the extensive history of Christianity, believers have often speculated about the anticipated arrival of the end of the prophesied times, and some have even tried to establish specific dates for this catastrophic event. These predictions are often focused on the outbreak of devastating wars, the growing spread of evil and moral decay, and the growing frequency and intensity of natural disasters. Many point to the intensification of storms, the emergence of deadly viruses, devastating famines, and the growing tensions between nations as convincing signs of the end that is approaching. One thing is still certain: the World War will undoubtedly appear in the future panorama of global events. Christ emphatically affirmed that wars would inevitably occur before his eventual return, as reflected in his moving words, "Nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom will rise." In a similar way, Revelation 6 speaks of a powerful horse that symbolizes the destructive force of war, which will finally steal the peace from the earth that cost him so much to win. Although the Bible does not explicitly mention the first two world wars by their name, it strongly suggests that another major global conflict could occur before the final culminating war. In fact, there is nothing explicitly contained in the scriptures that limits the number of world wars that could occur before the end. The final war is the one that receives the most complete description within the biblical texts, thus leaving open the possibility that other global conflicts may precede it. Regardless of the exact number of wars that finally occur, the scriptures assure the believers that justice will finally prevail when Christ, the King of Kings, triumphantly returns to defeat all forms of opposition. Even after the reign of 1,000 years of Christ, another possible rebellion may arise, which could imply a conflict of proportions of world war. During this tumultuous period, Satan will be temporarily released for a final and decisive battle before being thrown into the eternal lake of fire. Adding another layer of complexity, quartets of Nostradamus also sinisterly predict the emergence of a third Antichrist, whose eventual appearance will inexorably drive the world towards an unprecedented apocalyptic conflict of scales. According to their detailed predictions, two previous Antichrists, often identified as Napoleon Bonaparte and Adolf Hitler, have already left their indelible mark on history. However, it is supposedly this final Antichrist who will unleash a total chaos and ultimately will mark the beginning of the end of times. It is expected that this sinister individual has a powerful combination of charisma and cunning, potentially emerging as a prominent political or social leader who skillfully manipulates the masses to achieve his evil goals. Numerous people have speculated about the true identity of this third Antichrist, proposing a wide range of potential names and candidates. Some believe that this sinister figure will be someone who will have a significant influence, will exert substantial power, and will exhibit a remarkable capacity for persuasion, perhaps a widely recognized leader capable of influencing public opinion and manipulating global events. Several theories have linked this chilling prophecy with contemporary leaders, including controversial figures such as Donald Trump, Joe Biden, or even King Charles. However, the true identity of this enigmatic individual is still shrouded in uncertainty and speculation. All that can be definitively deduced from the cryptic quartets of Nostradamus is the sinister suggestion that this malevolent figure may already be present in some latent form, subtly insinuating the turbulent and uncertain times that humanity is currently facing. Some scholars interpret this prophecy not as a prediction of a single identifiable person, but rather as a reminder of the continuous and generalized spiritual battle between the forces of good and the forces of evil. Within the broader context of the Christian tradition, the current conflict between the kingdom of God and the kingdom of Satan is intensifying as the long-awaited return of Christ is approaching more and more. As a 1:2:18, it is already the last hour, and as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, so now many Antichrists have come, so we know that it is the last hour. This suggests that numerous figures throughout history could embody aspects of the Antichrist, acting as anyone who actively opposes the fundamental truth of the divine nature of Christ. Christian theologians generally believe that numerous Antichrists have emerged throughout history, each of whom actively opposes the divine truth and attempts to undermine the foundations of the Christian faith. However, the supreme Antichrist will be a specific and identifiable individual, a supreme force of evil that has not yet emerged completely on the world stage, but which, as prophesied, will briefly dominate the world before being finally defeated. Nostradamus's enigmatic words seem to suggest that this definitive antagonist will cast a long and sinister shadow over the carpet of human history, although they have not yet fully revealed their complete and terrifying power. As the last chapter of this era approaches, the scriptures indicate that there will be a final ruler whose influence and power will eclipse all others, initiating a reign of terror and oppression that will finally lead to a culminating conflict of apocalyptic proportions. It is possible that this final Antichrist is already active in some hidden or darkened way, but his true identity is still wrapped in a veil of mystery, even when his insidious influence becomes increasingly evident and omnipresent. Beyond this, Nostradamus's extensive writings also allude to an invisible and omnipresent power, often described as the spirit of the Antichrist. It is believed that this insidious spirit operates through several figures of the Antichrist throughout history, emerging from within and fundamentally opposing the divine order. Some Christian interpretations claim that this spirit infiltrates through deception and manipulation, subtly manifesting itself in individuals who were once associated with the religious or moral truth, and ultimately diverts them and corrupts their original purpose. This recurring pattern of deception is often seen as a constant theme throughout the history of humanity, in which certain individuals reach positions of power under the deceitful disguise of righteousness, and then reveal their malicious underlying intentions. The storm that approaches prophecies, climate change, and the destruction of the Antichrist. The dry land will become drier and suddenly a great flood will come, said Leproit. This gloomy omen suggests a future in which the already tense climatic reality will escalate to catastrophic levels. In fact, Nostradamus's prophetic writings have anticipated for a long time an intensification of extreme meteorological phenomena. He imagined a world dealing with unprecedented heat waves that break records, devastating landscapes that consume vast landscapes, prolonged droughts and weakening, and an increase in the frequency and ferocity of storms, unleashing chaos and destruction on vulnerable. Although the Holy Bible does not explicitly address the contemporary understanding of climate change with scientific precision, certain passages resonate with themes of environmental degradation and final destruction. The book of 2 Peter 3.10 offers a particularly shocking image. But the Lord will come as a thief, the heavens will disappear with thunder, the elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything in it will be naked. This passage, often interpreted as a symbolic representation of divine judgment, has also been seen by some as a warning about the state of decay of the earth. The verse also suggests that God will one day dissolve the existing universe and mark the beginning of a new era, creating new heavens and a new earth. This raises a fundamental question. Given the perspective of a divinely ordained replacement, how much effort should humanity invest in safeguarding a world destined to be replaced by an unimaginable kingdom of magnificence, one that diminishes our current existence in comparison? It is a profound dilemma that combines spiritual contemplation with the urgency of earthly action. In an era defined by generalized uncertainty and growing global uncertainty, the prophecies of Nostradamus, a figure involved both in fascination and in controversy, continue to captivate the imagination of believers and skeptics alike, involving them in a dialogue that spans centuries. Among his voluminous collection of predictions, none provokes a greater sense of concern than those that foretell the end of times and the rise of a potentially malevolent figure, an Antichrist of the Middle East. Nostradamus, famous and feared for the precision perceived by his pronouncements, for centuries has troubled generations with the amazing precision and the chilling detail of his visions. In this exploration, we delve into the cryptic verses written by the recognized seer, meticulously examining his warnings about cataclysmic events capable of remodeling the future of humanity. As we navigate through the prophetic panorama of Nostradamus, we face an inevitable feeling of anticipation and apprehension, to the point where his visions have shown to be precise over time. How do these ancient predictions align with the complexities of the current geopolitical panorama? And, perhaps most importantly, what do these prophecies predict for the collective future of humanity? From predictions of generalized wars and devastating natural disasters to the emergence of a dark and enigmatic leader, our exploration of the core of Nostradamus's predictions promises to be a journey that invites reflection and is deeply disturbing. Nostradamus's prophecies about the end of time have intrigued scholars and enthusiasts of countless generations, serving as a focal point for speculation and academic debate. He extensively wrote about the possible cascade of events that would lead to the end of the world as we know it, using a distinctive style characterized by a cryptic language, intricate metaphors, and symbolic images that defy an easy interpretation. One of his most cited and debated prophecies, which is found in Century X, Court Edda 72, vividly describes a great fire destined to swallow the world, a conflagration that will indelibly mark the end of civilization in its current form. This verse, along with many others scattered throughout his writings, has provoked an intense debate and various interpretations among those who study the intricate works of Nostradamus. Understanding the underlying meaning of his predictions requires more than casual reading. It requires a dedicated effort to decipher his symbolic language and capture the historical context in which he wrote. His verses are plagued with metaphors and complex allegories, which requires a meticulous analysis and a deep understanding of the symbolic frames he used. For example, he frequently alludes to figures such as the Great King of Terror and the Third Antichrist, entities that many interpret as representations of fundamental world events and powerful leaders and influential throughout history. By meticulously examining the historical context that surrounds life and the writings of Nostradamus, and by identifying convincing parallels between his prophetic words and the development of events in the real world, researchers have tirelessly tried to discover the true and often hidden meanings embedded in his prophetic writings. A particularly convincing and disturbing element in Nostradamus's predictions is the general concept of an Antichrist in the Middle East. According to his writings, this Antichrist will emerge from the volatile landscape of the Middle East, gradually accumulating significant power and influence, ultimately triggering agitation, devastation, and generalized suffering on the global stage. This figure, often described as a being of darkness and immense malevolence, will cause immense suffering and difficulties before facing its final fall, either through divine intervention or the actions of humanity. It is understandable that the very idea of an Antichrist in the Middle East has caused considerable debate, intense speculation, and various interpretations among scholars, researchers, and those generally interested in Nostradamus's prophecies. Some firmly believe that Nostradamus's predictions align directly with the rise and actions of certain figures and specific political movements that operate currently in the Middle East region, while others argue that this prophetic idea must be understood in a more metaphorical way, representing broader trends of political extremism and conflict instead of a literal individual. Regardless of the specific interpretation adopted, the chilling vision of a powerful and malevolent leader emerging from the Middle East continues to captivate, intrigue, and disturb those who follow and diligently analyze Nostradamus's enigmatic prophecies.